Hey guys, welcome to Careers Uncorked. This is your co-host Sid.
And this is your co-host Sharfuz.
At Careers Uncorked, we host some amazing guests and hear their incredible stories.
And we're super excited to have you join us today.
How's your Wednesday so far? Mine's been pretty long.
Yeah, my Wednesday, it just doesn't feel like the middle of the week. It feels like it should be the end of the week, just because last weekend was an extended weekend, so that was really fun. But yeah, it really does feel like a dragged out week.
Yeah, no, dude. Today feels like a Friday to me. But again, like as I always said, dude, what is time at the end of the day?
Right.
Yeah, dude. I remember the other conversation we had this when we were graduating, right? When we were talking about grad schools and like if grad school really makes sense for us. So, dude, I've always still been considering for business schools. Like, have you ever considered going to business schools?
I have, yeah. So I've always been curious about business school, right? Because what I've learned a lot about sort of progressing in the careers, and I know people hit sort of places where they sort of need an MBA or a master's degree to progress even further. So there's like sort of that roadblock. So I've spoken to a lot of my friends, and they definitely do recommend at least a master's, and then maybe a further degree after that. But master's definitely, I think it's catching up, especially because a lot more people are getting their undergraduate degree.
Yeah, no, dude, for sure. I've always been thinking about like doing an MBA, but like, dude, it's definitely not an easy thing to do. Especially, it depends on the kind of MBA school you go to. Like, you have to go to one of the top ones.
Right.
Yeah, and dude, that's what our session is about today, and what we're so excited about because we have actually our guest today is a graduate. It's a recent graduate from one of the best business schools in the country, from the Booth School of Business.
Yep.
So, do you want to bring on Evis to the show and just introduce him?
Yep, let's bring on Evis. Hey, how's it going, Evis?
Hey guys, good. How are you guys?
Doing very well. To kick off the conversation, how about we start with just a quick introduction about yourself? Maybe tell us about what you're doing right now and your college and the sort of degree that you pursued.
Yeah, for sure. So my name is Evis Chernova. So I did my undergrad at the University of Massachusetts in Amherst. So I grew up in Boston. That's out west in western Massachusetts. And so I was pre-med there / biology with a minor in computer science. And so plan was to always go to med school. That didn't happen. Made some decisions there, and then most recently now. So I just graduated from Booth, as you mentioned, and now the director of product and head of product at a company called TrueData, which is a mobile big data company out of Chicago.
Wow, that is really exciting. So I think there's a couple of things that we're really, really excited to hear specifically about the MBA experience. So, Sharfuz, how about you get us started?
Yeah, no, as before we go there, I definitely have to unpack and ask this question. How do you end up from pre-med and that background to like just getting into technology, into tech and business school? Because that's a really big transition. Like what happened there?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I'd always been really interested in technology and software. My entire life, I was always one of those kids who was tinkering around and crashing computers, and would go through like 2 Dell desktop towers every year because I would get some random virus on it. So I was just going all over the internet trying to learn as much as I can. So it was always something I was really interested in. So that's why I ended up doing the minor. But the thought was, go do pre-med, go to med school one day, and then go from there. And so for me, I took my MCATs and I was ready to go right out of undergrad. But I thought, what a big decision. I should take some time off. Maybe I'll do an internship. Maybe I'll go do something else before I really jump into 8 to 10 more years of potential schooling. So I kind of just looked around and I thought, what can I do that will get me sort of a good introduction into the business world, given I'd never taken a business class in my entire life. Like I was purely science focused for 20 years of schooling. And I thought, software sales, frankly, you don't need a specific hard degree. Like you don't need an accounting degree to get into it. And they look for people who are, who are hungry, who want to work, who want to learn, which is something that I definitely was. And it had to do with software, which I was always really interested in. So I just networked. I talked to friends who'd gotten jobs there. I talked to other, folks, mentors. I'd cold outreach people on LinkedIn. Asked them for advice and for information, and eventually I got myself into a company out in Boston called Experian Data Quality, and it kind of took it from there.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I think Experian is when people hear of it, it could be like a bad memory for them because they usually check their grade score.
It's a big company, but they have some really interesting sort of software divisions where they work with big data, which is what I was fortunate enough to get myself into. But the credit part is definitely a big part of their business.
Yeah, no, dude. Absolutely, for sure, for sure. I thought, I guess, so one thing I'm curious about is at that time, right? You didn't have that experience, and there's this notion for sales, you need like a lot of those interpersonal skills, perhaps. And we've heard that many times. So, what would you say that kind of helped you get like into that into that first job? Are there any particular experiences in college that sort of gave you those skills, or something you could connect back with?
Honestly, I didn't. All my internships in college were all very science focused. I worked at Harvard Medical School. I worked at the Harvard School of Public Health. So every internship I had was extremely science focused, and I wanted to do med school, and that was the plan, for years and years. So coming out of it, this was something totally new to me, and I think the way that I tried to go about it was. I definitely leveraged the software route, talking about, hey, software is something I'm really interested in. I really want to go this route. I can pick up on the sales skills. And then I just tried to have a lot of friends who were already in sales positions or had gotten sales jobs, just talk me through what the interview process was like. What are they looking for? And then I also just reached out to people on LinkedIn. I just asked people who are in sales positions, what do you look for when you're hiring somebody? And I tried to connect, what are my skills, even if it's not something I have on paper, what can I talk to and what can I really sort of accentuate to make this connection between, they're looking for somebody who's has strong written skills and oral skills and so on, presentation skills. While I didn't do any business presentations, I did plenty of biology and chemistry presentations. For me, it was just different sort of subject matter you're talking about, but the skills are all the same, right? You still have to be presentable. You still have to be able to communicate ideas clearly, break big ideas into small ones. So even if you don't have a really strong sort of expertise in the subject matter, you probably already have the skills you need to be successful. It's just a different subject that you're talking about, right? It's like, being, talking about chemistry and going talking about biology. They're two different subjects, but roughly it's still the same sort of thought process you need to go through.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really cool what you said. Especially, I think one thing we've been hearing a lot recently, is especially because of COVID and opportunities being very less, is that you have to be very flexible with the market and like transferring your skills. So I guess people are not limited by the major there or the academic, right? Is that something that you would attest for like current students who are tuning in today?
No, I don't think so. With that being said, it's always easier to get into a job that you've done some work in, right? It's always easier to get a developer job if you're a software, a CS grad. But I think what people are looking for now, and definitely what I've looked for in my business, is you're looking for somebody who's smart, who can work hard, and you can show that in a lot of different ways in a lot of different majors. I've had friends, for example, my CEO. He was a sort of a liberal arts undergrad, and he started a data company. So those two things, you wouldn't think about sort of being the same thing. But as long as you have sort of the right mental framework, and the way I think about it is if you know how to learn, it almost doesn't matter what you're learning, right? You can learn anything. So it's a lot more of thinking about what is the framework, what is the structure, what are the steps I need to go through. And that was something that I talked a lot about sort of in my first job, and I talk a lot about it, in almost any job I've gotten since then. Is I was very science focused growing up, and what you learn in science is you learn the scientific method, right? You see an observation, you make a hypothesis, you plan an experiment, you test it, and then you iterate over and over again. That's really similar to software. Software is the exact same way, right? You see an observation in the real world, a need that people have. And then you come up with a hypothesis. If I built this software to solve this need, people will buy it. And then you make an experiment, right? You build some sort of software, and then you test it. You go out, you give it to people. You have alpha testers, beta testers, and then you get feedback, and you iterate on it. So it's very similar in sales and on almost any other job, right? You can take marketing for an example. Hey, I have this business. I see this need out in the marketplace. I have this hypothesis that if I position my business in a certain way, people will respond positively and click on my ad, or they'll respond to my email, and I'm going to test it, right? I'm going to come up with 5 different campaigns. I'm going to see which ones have the best performance, and then I'm going to iterate on the best one that I find. So it's this like framework of like the scientific method. You can apply that to anything. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be something that you learned in school, right? So to me, it's a lot more of like, what is the right way to learn than really what the topic of whatever topic you're learning.
That's
Yeah.
really interesting. Just to jump in there, I think that's one of the biggest things that I've seen personally that really impacts people, because it's like you won't always find the exact fit role that maybe you're looking for, but you can really translate your experiences in a different way to suit a different job. So sort of like you described, like you took your experiences in the sciences and like were able to say the story in terms of like software and computers. So that's really interesting.
And I think, like nowadays what you're seeing is you have, as humans, we have the internet, right, which has access to any and everything you could learn. You don't need a specific degree in something to do it, right? So like so many companies, big tech companies, have dropped their college requirements, or have dropped their degree requirements. You can get all these skills in a different way. So I think if you're passionate about something, you can do all of that without having an undergrad degree in that particular subject, and you can show that expertise and show that passion in different side projects that you're working on. And a lot of the times, what happens is if you're going to a recruiter and you're saying, "Look, I have an undergrad degree in this," it's almost sometimes better to say, "I've done all these side projects on top of this other thing I was doing because I was so passionate about it." Right? You kind of get this point across, like, I had all this entire like full-time job to do, but because I love this one thing so much, I did all this side work. And that almost shows that you're more passionate about that than if you just had a normal undergrad degree in it. So I think it's all about thinking about like, what's your position? What's your leverage? How do you position yourself relative to other candidates? And how do you make yourself seem sort of more attractive to those job hunters and recruiters?
Very, very true.
Yeah, no, yeah, absolutely. I think you talked about so many cool things right over there in such a short time. I think you described entrepreneurship and product development earlier in such a great way, like the hypothesis and the testing and how you connected that with biology and like doing all that stuff. I thought that was really cool, and especially like working on like those other things, just like focusing on other things, doing doing a normal undergrad. So, dude, that's really, really awesome, and that's something like me and Sid, we've also always been like more active on campus and doing other stuff as well as academics. So yeah, I think definitely plus points for that. But I think another thing I'm like, it's interesting is that you were in the role at Experian for like almost over a year, right? If I'm not mistaken, and then you jumped onto Oracle. Right. So one thing I'm curious about is like what made that change for you? Did you feel like it was time for a transition? Do you think like what kind of happened there?
Yeah, I was at Experian for a little under 2 years. I had a couple different roles there. So I started out, sales development associate. I was grinding the sales floor, making 60 to 100 calls a day, and just hustling, trying to set up leads and set up meetings for account executives, and I got promoted a few times and just worked really hard. So for me, when I was at Experian, I had a chance to move out to the West Coast, and at the time I was 23 years old, and I thought, this is something cool. This is something new. It's a whole new world over there. I've never been to San Francisco. Why don't I just do it and just see what happens? I had nothing to lose, right? If worst happens is that you just move back home and you're right back to where you started. And the best thing that could happen is you have some amazing life-changing experience. You meet some really cool people. So to me, the upside totally outweighed the downside. So I moved out there, and then I started to meet people and sort of network and just talk to as many people as I can. And I was still trying to figure out exactly what I wanted to do. At this point, 2 years, I kind of thought, med school probably isn't going to happen. I'm not that interested anymore. There's this whole new cool business software world that is really, really interesting and exciting to me. Has a lot of opportunities. Let's go see where this thing will take us. So at the time when I moved out to San Francisco, then I started to learn more about startups and venture capital and funding and that entire ecosystem, which is so strong in the Bay Area. So I think once I really kind of learned more about what that world was like, that's when I decided, this is really the world that I want to go down, and this is the path that I want to go down. So then I like sort of any good scientist or any good sort of business person, I started just thinking about a plan. I started thinking, if one day I want to go do venture capital, or one day I want to work at a very early stage startup that's going to be successful, how do I get there? And how do I put a plan in place to make myself sort of as best prepared from a skills perspective and experience perspective, but also make myself as attractive to those companies as humanly possible. And that really guided me for up until this point, and I think it'll still guide me to think about what is the end goal, and then how do you work backwards from that to where you are today, and what are the right steps you need to take, and how does all of that make sense with the story you're trying to tell about yourself and your career and your experience?
Yeah, no, yeah, absolutely. I think it's really cool that you just kind of saw the end goal in place and you sort of took those risks. Because I personally, I think for me and a lot of other people I've seen, like always, a lot of people leave their jobs after a year, their first job, or in 2 years. I think Sid, you also made your first transition from Accenture, right?
I did, yeah,
After you-
pretty soon, about 11 months, 12 months into the role. I was pulled on by TCS, so yeah.
Yeah, I think the main thing I try to think about is like, what are you optimizing for? Are you optimizing for years of service, we'll call it, or are you optimizing for learning and for experience? So I think you can be at a job for 6 months and learn everything you need to know about the job in 6 months. Then after that, maybe it's you have smaller gains, they're more incremental gains, and you're kind of just refining and honing your craft. As opposed to there are other jobs. I was at IBM for 3 years after Oracle, and I up to 2 years I was learning something new every single day, and then it was a year after that of just kind of refining it. So I think one of the questions you have to ask yourself is like, what am I trying to get out of this experience? Is it I'm trying to learn something new? Is it I'm trying to meet more people? And you kind of define how long you want to stay around, based around that.
Right.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely. That's very true. And I feel like as a recent grad and a lot of young professionals, I think on one block is that they don't know like when is the time to take that risk or to move on to the next thing, or they should like enjoy the comfort. And I think a lot of international students are really also afraid to. So I personally am an international student. So I think for international student, it becomes also a matter of risk because we have this company, like even like normal times, right? We have this. It's hard to break into the company, not literally, but like get a job, and then you have to like then making a switch is like also always like a gutsy thing to do.
Yeah, no, I totally hear you, and I think especially in the last couple of days with with a lot of the announcements that have been going on, that it puts even more risk on it. To me, what I always come back to is you have to ask yourself, why are you making the switch? Is it because you've stopped learning, because you're not pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, you're not being put in positions where you can kind of prove yourself? And I think at the end of it, there's nothing wrong with sticking around because it's comfortable and because you're learning something. That's totally fine, right? You can always learn outside of work and work on your own side projects. But to me, what it comes down to is if you are somebody who's trying to make a switch, especially if you're an international student, I think the best way you can go about doing it is having somebody reference you and having somebody vouch for you. Because as somebody who's been in a hiring position and I've hired lots of people, what you're trying to do is you're trying to find somebody who's going to be good at what they do. And I know that sounds of course you want somebody who's going to be good at what they do, but a lot of times you don't know, right? You don't know. Like somebody can tell you something in an interview and you just have no idea if that's true or not. And this has happened. I've definitely made hires where the person I thought I was hiring wasn't that person, and that becomes a really difficult situation to have. And vice versa. I've made hires where I thought somebody had a lot of promise and they totally blew my expectations away. So there is this risk as a hiring manager where you just don't really know what you're getting sometimes, which is why people do reference calls. But even those are very, very flawed in themselves, right? You're only going to get references for somebody's going to give you a good reference.
Exactly.
So if you can network your way into the company, and ideally it's with somebody you've worked before. So maybe you're working, say like you're at TCS, right? If you're working with a client and you've done really great work for them, that's going to be a great reference for you because they know you can do the work, right? They know that you can be really successful at what you're doing. So that automatically that removes so much of the risk from them hiring you, and they're much more willing to vouch for any other, whether it's if you're an international student, if you need some sort of visa support or some other type of support, they're going to be willing to take that on and sort of go to bat for you because they've seen sort of what you've been able to do.
Very, very true. Yeah. I agree more.
Yeah, absolutely. Quick question: since you mentioned that you had that opportunity from being from a hiring manager's perspective, right? So I think one question is that so it's like applying to the ATS is not like a more feasible. It's not always the most feasible thing, right? And networking connections and networking is important. So from your perspective, when you had candidates who had a referral or someone vouched for them, did you, even if they like messed up the interview, did you still have like a better opinion about them or something like that? Like, what was your mindset there?
You know, I've been in this position before, and you just give somebody a second chance. You're much quicker to give somebody a second chance,
Right.
and mentally you go through this thought process of like, if this person you've never met and they mess up, you immediately almost write them off. You're like, well, they weren't prepared or they didn't take this seriously. But if it's somebody that has referred you, or if you have a friend and they've sort of referred them, you're much more likely to be like, okay, well, maybe they had a bad day. If otherwise, why would this person refer to me? Okay, maybe I should go back and check with this person. Hey, this is what happened. But you're just much more open to saying, maybe let me just take a second look and give them a better chance. Which is, I always recommend try and network, try and sort of make connections into a job. You're always going to be way more successful at actually getting that job than applying through a job board.
Very true.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely.
So I think it's time to jump to our favorite section, which is the rapid fire.
Are we going to rapid fire round? Okay.
Yeah. So to get you started, what was your best MBA class you took?
Best MBA class was entrepreneurial finance and private equity. So it's a class where you had 10 classes. The first 5 classes where you were valuing venture capital deals, and then the last 5 classes you were valuing private equity deals. And it's super interesting to see how different they were from a VC to a PE deal, and the different processes you go through and the different sort of expectations you have of each deal and the different thresholds. So it's a really good sort of in-depth look at all the different kinds of deals that are out there in the M&A space.
Wow.
Dude, that's so cool. Somebody in corporate, that's really, really cool. Definitely. Okay, Evis, next one. Deep dish pizza or normal pizza?
I live in Chicago. I got to go deep dish pizza. Giordano's and Lou Malnati's. I have it not that often, but it's here when I want it. So I definitely prefer it.
Yeah.
You forgot the Boston spirit, man.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
All right. So question from me: East Coast, West Coast, or the Midwest?
Ooh, that's a great question. Yeah, they're just so different. There's just the mentality. Like East Coast people are just hustlers, and they just work really, really hard. West Coast people, and everybody has their pros and cons. So this is not to say anything bad about either. But I think West Coast people are they still hustle, but they're just a lot more maybe creative or thoughtful in how they go about it. They just think in different ways, which is why I think you have New York, which is so successful because it's a hustle, and then you have the area, which is very successful in its own way because it's you take a different approach to the problem. So I definitely like both. I think I probably have to lean towards the West Coast just because that's how mine works. But yeah, I've definitely had some good experiences. The Midwest is great. It's a great combination of both.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. I would also go for the West Coast. It's like the sun, dude, and like being in Boston and the cold. Nah.
You can't beat it. Yeah, not having winter is a very good thing.
That's a good thing. I think it'll make you just feel more cheerful. Just having not having a blizzard hit your face, right?
Yeah.
No, for sure. Okay, so next one, dude. New England Patriots or Chicago Cubs?
Oh, Patriots all day. Yeah, that's not even a question. I'm a big Patriots fan.
Okay, so the Cubs did not really sway you or anything, so just OG Patriots.
Yeah, Cubs are great. Wrigley Field is amazing. Yeah, I try to go at least a few times a year. But yeah, nothing can sort of replace the Patriots in my mind.
All right. Okay, even up with Brady leaving, like that's still fine.
I know now I have to maybe cheer for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, which is just not something I thought I'd ever have to do. But I'll cheer for Tom, and I'll definitely still cheer for the Patriots always.
All right. Sounds good. A true fan here. That's awesome.
All right. What's your favorite travel destination?
So I'll give you 2. I'll give you sort of domestic favorite travel destination is probably going to have to be either Austin, Texas. My brother lives there, and I visited a ton of times, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful city. And then international probably has to be Albania. Yeah, that's where I was born. That's where all my family is, and it's just a beautiful little country right in the Mediterranean. And then you don't get a lot of tourists, and it's great. So definitely love going back there as much as I can.
Yeah, that's really exciting. I mean, I'm in Austin right now, so if you want to come over, we can hang out.
Nice. Happy to.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, that's kind of funny. You said Austin. That's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. Okay, so next one. Any book or podcast that you listen to or that you really like and would like recommend? Maybe.
For books, I would definitely, there's two that I really love. One is 0 to 1, which is out there. A lot of people have heard of it. I would highly recommend it.
Yeah.
It's a great way to think about sort of new ideas and how you bring it to market. Another one that I really like, which is a little bit older, is called Goal or The Goal. It's sort of an older look at sort of how do you motivate a team, how do you deal with business challenges, how do you get the most out of people. And so I really love that one. In terms of podcasts, How I Built This is a great one. And then Business Wars is really good too, because they take a deep dive into things like Google versus Apple, when Google had sort of Google Maps and Apple had Apple Maps. Microsoft versus Xbox, Blockbuster versus Netflix. They do a really good job of diving deep into the content.
It's really interesting.
Yeah, no, we'll definitely. So we do like a takeaway after every session, and we'll definitely put those recommendations in there, and we'll also add links. So
I'll send you guys links. Yeah,
that's awesome. Dude. Thanks for that. Yeah.
All right. So this is the second to last question. If you had any superpower, what would it be?
Ooh, that's a good one. I'd probably go with, I mean, the standard, teleportation one is just always so nice. To be able to cut out a commute would be life changing. Transport yourself anywhere. So I think that's probably the one I'd go with.
I was going to just teleport to Austin right now and grab
exactly. Teleport to an island. Yeah.
All right, thanks for sharing. Okay, so it's our last question. It's a very controversial question, so we always put our guests on the spot with that. But the question is favorite co-host, Sid or Sharfuz? We have like a tally. It's very
I'm gonna say Sharfuz only because you were the first one that I talked to, so I'm gonna give you the benefit of the doubt.
Wow, Sharfuz is on a winning streak here.
Yeah. See, Sid, that's why I took the responsibility to reach out to people.
I appreciate it. Yeah.
It's very strategic. But yeah, Evis, thanks for being such a great sport. We just throw these random questions at our guests, but thanks for
cool.
Yeah, no, that was really fun. But yeah, Sid, what's in your mind?
So I'm really curious to hear about how you sort of planned your way to your MBA. So when in your career did you realize that you want to pursue an MBA? Was it something you knew when you started off at undergrad, or did you figure it out as you went along?
Definitely not something I thought about in undergrad. For me, undergrad was sort of med school 100%. But then after a couple of years, especially once I moved up to San Francisco, when I kind of made the decision to not do med school, I started thinking, I have all this science background and I have starting to get all this business experience, which is great. But I really wanted sort of the academic experience to round it out. So even though I was learning a lot of what I thought what I would learn in business school, I felt like I really needed to have that sort of academic background as well. And then for me, it also started when I started to think about venture capital and early stage startups. I to my point earlier, I started kind of working backwards, and I thought, well, if I want to do VC or early stage startups at some point in my life, I don't know when, but at some point, I kind of thought, what kind of profile of people get into early stage startups or venture capitalists? It's either previous founders or it's people from business school. And I thought, maybe I'll go start a company at some point. That seems like a lot of work right now. So I was like, maybe business school may be a little bit easier. So then I started working backwards from there. And I thought, what business schools send a lot of people to venture capital programs? Business schools with great finance programs. I thought, what schools have the best finance programs? So I kind of just started working backwards from there. And that really guided a lot of the decisions I made in my career, and definitely the decision to do business school.
Wow. And so walk me through that process. So like, when was it like when you had that realization, like, oh, now I want to go to business school, and how did you go around that application process, and what was that exactly like?
Yeah, it was probably like 4 years after I actually decided I wanted to do it that I actually started doing it. So I probably decided, 2 years out of college, and it wasn't until sort of 4 years after that I actually, went through with it. I started taking the GMAT like 4 separate times over the course of a year and a half, and every time I'd start, work would get really busy, so I'd stop studying, and then 4 months later I'd pick it up again. So I went back and forth all the time. And then one time I was just like, and I was doing consulting at the time. So I was traveling 4 days a week, living life in a hotel, and just working a ton. So it was always really hard to find time to do it. But when I finally kind of sat down and said, this is when I'm going to finally do it, I just decided, 2 to 3 hours every single day during the weekdays. And then, 4, 5, 6, 7 hours on the weekends. I'm just going to go hard for 3 months. And I think the biggest thing you have to do is it's really hard to just do it. And I think that's probably why it took me so long. What I'd recommend is if anybody wants to do it, pick a day, sign up for it and pay for it. So it gives yourself a forcing function to say, this is the day I already decided I'm going to do it. I need to do it and be ready by this day. And give yourself, you want to give yourself probably 4 to 5 months, depending on what your work schedule is like, before you actually get ready to take it. So that's definitely what I'd recommend is like, give yourself some time, pick a day, sign up for the day, and then just always keep in front of mind that you're not going to change it. That's the day you're going to take it. You could take it again if you need to. But yeah, it took me a while before I actually like sat down and was like, all right, I need to actually go do this thing.
Yeah.
And I'm curious to hear, like, what do you think distinguished you as a candidate for the MBA program? What do you think, as part of your experiences and also, of course, your scores, what do you think was a big distinguishing factor?
Yeah, as far as the scores and then GPA and all that stuff goes, there's always going to be somebody who has better scores than you. It's just you can try and you can always try and get your 800, and that's fine.
Yeah.
Especially for the top programs, everybody has good scores, so that's not going to distinguish you. I think what really distinguishes you is your story. At the end of the day, it's talking about, why did you make the decisions you've made in your career? Why is that going to lead you towards success? And then something that Sharfuz and I talked about is, at the end of the day, and sometimes I maybe take a little bit of a pessimistic view of the world, but the whole idea of a business school, if you think about it from their perspective, is that, we're a school, we live off of donations. So if I select the people who I think have the highest probability of success later on in their career, they're going to come back and donate to us, and we're going to have this brand name recognition, right? That just is the way of the world.
Yeah.
So they're going to pick the people who sort of maximize those chances of success. So if you start positioning yourself in a way that fits your story in with that story, you increase your chances of success as well. So if you make sense of the choices that you've made, in their eyes, they're like, okay, well, this is somebody who clearly has a plan, who's executing against this plan. And therefore, if they're doing this before business school, they should also do this after business school, and hopefully should lead to higher chances of success. And that's going to be good for them as well as our school. So I think if you try and really think about what your story is, why you're different, why you're going to be successful, then they're going to say, okay, great, I'm more likely to pick this person over the other person who's just kind of like worked a job or worked a couple of jobs, doesn't really have much of a plan, many concrete good goals. I think you're probably in a better standing that way.
Well, that's a really interesting outlook.
Yeah, no, for sure. And just to jump in there, Evis, so I love this plan of yours, this approach of your story where you like sort of walk backwards and like you kind of had that goal in mind. So like what, and you sort of I guess you sort of research on what kind of candidates and like what kind of profiles does like a lot of the MBA schools have, right? And that's something I have personally done myself, and I've seen that. I think a lot of people do that. So what kind of decisions have you made based on that, just to be on a more specific and kind of the risk that you may have taken associated with that?
Yeah, for me, it was like the goal is venture capital or early stage startups at some point. I thought, what business schools sort of send more people to those than others. I made a list of that. And then I said, okay, well, what business schools are the best business schools? Because those ones in the top. I narrowed my list down. I thought, okay, what are, every business school publishes the candidates for their newest class. They publish what they did before business school starts. So if you look at those profiles, you can start to pretty quickly see that people like consultants make up the majority of them, right? So I thought, okay, I got to go be a consultant. And so like every step of the way is just trying to maximize your odds, right? Trying to maximize the probability that you're going to do what you want to do and you're going to get into this program. That's not to say that you have to be a consultant at all. You really don't at all. What they're much more interested in is your story and how you think about your career in the world, and what your goals and what your plans are. But with that being said, if you're a consultant and you have that story, I felt like that, those two combined will give me really good chances. So then I thought, okay, well, I got to go be a consultant at some point. How do I become a consultant? Well, Oracle works with a lot of consultants. Okay, I got to go to Oracle. There I can work with a lot of, system integrators and other, consulting companies. Maybe I can network my way into, into another one of those jobs. So it really sort of guided the path towards, if I look at my end goal, whatever that is, I start working backwards from there, kind of step by step. Eventually, I'm going to get to where I'm at today, and that's going to help me figure out what the next step is. And I think the most important part of all of that is you have to keep reevaluating this plan. Okay, now I made this step. Okay, does it feel like I'm going in the right direction, or have things changed for the school, for me, for my industry, what I want to do? And do I need to rethink of a new plan? I think if you keep doing this process over and over again, you eventually kind of get to your end goal. And it's just like the scientific method, right? I have a hypothesis that if I become a consultant, I'll get into a good business school, and I'm going to go talk to people, and I'm going to go look at the data, and I'm going to reevaluate my plan as I get further and further down my process. So I think if you have this framework of experimentation and learning and looking at data, hopefully it can lead you down the right path.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think that was a really good framework, and definitely I think it would really help a lot of people just like who are tuning in and who would like listen to this after, on like how they could approach it. But definitely, like I like that you said that like to consistently keep reevaluating the plan and not just stick to it and like what's your story at the end of the day. I think that's what really I think that's definitely very, very important.
Yeah, and I think for me, when I look at my career, it's software sales to management consulting to product role at a early stage startup. And when I kind of talked about this plan in my admissions essays, I just tried to weave it all as in like here, and this is I do when I'm hiring people. I don't really care about what the next job you have, or I want to know, why did you go to this job? What was the reason that you left, and why do you think this was the right one? So you're always you're testing more for what is the thought process, what is the reasoning, what is the strategy, as opposed to what the actual move is. It almost doesn't matter where you go, right? It doesn't matter if you go from Accenture to a very small random company. If the thinking and the thought process made sense, that's more important than what the name of the company actually was or who they were.
Yeah.
Okay. No, absolutely. No, thanks for definitely sharing that. And definitely like the story is definitely like one of the most important things. So definitely thanks for all the emphasis on that. So I think this is a good transition to just to learn a little bit about your experience at Booth, because that's definitely probably a dream school for a lot of people, and definitely for me as well. Like it's such an incredible place. So what was like some of the most rewarding things that was there for you at Booth, that happened for you?
Yeah, I think having access to just a lot of opportunities is always really, really helpful. And truthfully, that just is what you get when you go to business school like Booth. You have access to people, to networks, to alumni networks. You have access to internships that you may not have access to otherwise. So access to opportunities is definitely something that's really helpful. But I think the most rewarding thing by far are just the connections and the people that you meet and you make. To me, that is really where the value, almost 80% of the value of an MBA really comes from, is
Right.
that a lot of other people who are like-minded, who are who want to be successful, who work hard, are trying to make big moves and big steps in their lives, and they're taking this journey along with you, and they're typically the same age, and they have a similar mindset of the world. So meeting those people, and that those people are going to be successful too, is the biggest thing by far, because you go through it together, and you all sort of want the same thing at the end of the day. So if you try to maximize your ability to meet as many people and make real genuine connections, and not just I want to be friends with this person because I think they can help me out later in life. You want to connect on a deeper personal level. That I think you'll definitely sort of maximize the value of your time and your money spent there. And then the internships and the opportunities and all that stuff is really, really great too, and definitely important. But the network is by far the biggest thing.
Absolutely, no, definitely. I think because I think there's like that thing going on about MBA. It's like how important that network is, and like the MBA school you go through, like people go. The MBA is a lot of is of like huge value. So do you think like it matters to and at this point, like which MBA school you go to, like ranking wise or kind of reputation wise in this? What would you say?
Yeah, it's in a post-COVID time or during COVID time, it's really interesting. Like if you look
Yeah.
at Harvard, HBS, they just announced that all their 20 and 21 classes are all going to be online.
Yeah.
If you look at some other schools like Booth, for example, is doing a hybrid approach. They're doing some in person, some online.
Yeah.
Um, I think truthfully, you do lose out on a lot of that value because you don't have that. You can still build connections and meet people, but you lose out on the face to face. You lose out on the chance encounters when you're, in the dining hall getting food or whatever it is when you're doing group projects with people. I think you lose out on a lot of that. So I've had friends who are continuing full strong, trying to finish the program. I've had friends who are deferring and saying I'm going to take a year off because I really want to do this in person. And I've known a couple of people who have just dropped out and said, this just isn't for me anymore. And that definitely happens too. I think it's all part of this, reevaluation you kind of undergo in every step of your life is, did I make the right move? Is this the right thing for me? And at the end of the day, no matter how attractive something is, if you don't feel comfortable doing it, if you're not passionate about it, it's just not worth it. So I think if you look at sort of those, your options and sort of make the best choice for you, I think you're always going to be sort of in a better place than doing something you just don't feel excited about.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that's definitely very valuable. Like I think I think we keep hearing that. Like at the end of the day, it's just like from other guests as well. Like following that what you're excited about at the end of the day, that's what really truly speaks to you, right?
Yep.
I think for me too, it's what's always been really interesting is like I've never thought of a career as a particular job. Like I'm never like, oh, I want to be a CEO one day. The way I think about it is like it's kind of this working backwards approach of like, what is the work I want to do one day? And that work is I want to work with really smart people to build really cool things that people are going to love.
Mhm.
Okay, what job does that, right? And then you kind of work backwards. Okay, now it's a chief product officer, whatever it is, right? Okay, cool. How do I become a chief product officer? So if you kind of set your end goal as a type of work you want to do or doing something that you really love, you can always find a specific role that does that, and then kind of figure out how to get into that. But I think take the approach of like do something you love and something you're passionate about, and you can always figure out how to get yourself there.
Yeah.
Very, very true.
No, yeah, for sure. Evis, I really like your approach. Like with you, I think you apply to everywhere. Like just working backwards from everything. Like that's amazing, man. Like how you like just apply that to different places. That's really cool.
Definitely a planner. It's helped me my product experience, but it's not the only way to do it, but it's sort of the way that I found best.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. Definitely. I think like one thing I was curious about was also like, and say that you and I we were talking about it, right? About academics in business school. So like, was the academics like pretty rigorous? Do you think you learned a lot? Like, I think this is more for a question for like for prospective applicants if they're considering an MBA school. What would you say was rewarding about that?
Yeah, I think for me, I learned a lot just because I'd literally never taken a business class ever in my entire life until I'd never taken a accounting class or anything like that. So just like learning a lot of the basics that I learned throughout like my management consulting days in the real world. It's good to learn that sort of in the academic world. But I had a lot of friends who came in as private equity people or investment banking people who knew a lot of that, and they just didn't take those classes. So I think for me, what was really important was that Booth was super flexible. Like you take 20 classes to graduate, only I think 6 of those are ones that you have to take. You have 14 classes to take in whatever subject that you want. So I think it's all about thinking about what are you trying to get out of it. If you're trying to get the network and the opportunities out of it, then the academics are can be interesting. That's probably not what you're optimizing for. For me, it was I want the network and I want the academics. So I definitely paid attention and tried to learn as much as I can. In terms of the classes themselves, there's definitely a lot of work involved, but it's not something you can't do. And I think you get a lot of guidance from students who have taken the classes before around which professor to take it with, what's the amount of work that you need to be doing, any sort of plan that way. But for Booth has this combination of case-based lectures, like HBS is all case-based, and traditional sort of academic lecture type of classes. So it's nice because you get a mix, and then you just take classes with professors who are interesting and subjects that that are interesting. At the end of the day, like no job you're going to get after business school is going to grill you on whether or not you learn this in business school, because you kind of learn a little bit of everything. So to me, it's a lot more of like, get the main point, get the main topic. If you're going to do investment banking or something, a hard sort of, business kind of topic like that, or field like that, you want to have a good idea about valuation, about, modeling, but you learn a lot of that on the job too, right? Nobody expects you in an investment, banking interview to know, everything about valuation down to the T. You have to have a general idea, of course, and be decent at it. But you don't need to be, the world's expert in it. So I wouldn't sort of like focus too much on that.
No, absolutely. I think that was some valuable advice. Definitely, thank you for sharing that. And I think especially the case model of like the business schools. I think that's definitely something very not unlike undergrad. So that's something definitely to look forward to. That's really cool. I think. So overall,
I think just one more point on that, just before I forget. Like Booth, for example, has non-grade disclosure. So like nobody after business school can ask you for your grades. You can't tell them. So like the whole idea behind that was to not make everybody so competitive, because it's not about the grades. Like it's about understanding the main point, and it's about networking, making connections, meeting professors, learning something new, kind of broadening your horizons. Nobody don't fail. You have to pass your classes and try and do reasonably well. But nobody's going to ask you for your grades afterwards. At least nobody from Booth will. They have other ways of trying to solve for that with like your GMAT score, which is something I always found really interesting. But it's at the end of the day, it's not about sort of what if you got an A- or a B+. That's not the main takeaway.
That's not the main takeaway. Which is cool. Like undergrad was so competitive, right? You have the curve, and there are some kids who put the curve up so high, and dude, that just sucked. So it's good to know that like that's not the case with MBA schools. Like that's really awesome.
Sure, Bruce, I'm really excited just about that, just about the
we're always below the curve, man. Like the curve didn't favor us. So that's really good. That's really good. And I know like we're hitting that time mark because we've been sitting, because we also want to be very cautious of our guest time, and we want to hit towards our latter segments. But Evis, like there's like so much like in your industry experience, there's so much to like just learn from. I guess I do have to ask you the question about your experience in foundation capital before we go to one of our closing segments. So like, what was your experience like just working in the VC world there, and like sort of what did you learn, and what was your main takeaways from that experience? Like why should people like consider working at a VC?
Yeah, for sure. My experience at foundation was amazing. It was the best experience I could ask for. I think when you're working in venture capital, I think the thing you have to really start thinking about is like, and especially I'm going to talk about sort of before COVID, in pre-COVID times, every venture capital firm has money. Like money is a scarce resource that it was in the late 90s or the early 2000s. Right, you can go to anybody and sort of get money from. So you have to really think about like, how do you differentiate yourself across all the other venture capitalists who are trying to give money to a very small amount of startups who everyone believes are going to be successful. And then on top of that, you have to think about what are the startups that maybe nobody thinks is going to be successful, but you see it, and how do you give value to those guys and really convince them that hey, you should come and partner with me, and I should be able to fund your startup. So venture capital, at the end of the day, my view is it's a sales role, right? At the end of the day, you're selling your capital, you're selling your expertise to the startup. You have to understand that there's also this information asymmetry between venture capitalists and startup founders. As a venture capitalist, you're never going to know as much about that particular business as a founder will. So you're never going to be in a position to say, hey, I'm going to help you solve your problems, unless it's something like hiring, which is very different, right? You can go out and kind of tap into your network. But if a founder has a really, really specific problem, you can kind of lean into your expertise and see how other companies have solved it. But you're never going to be the one solving it, because that's not your job, right? Your job isn't to solve these problems for them. That's the founder's job. So when you think about that and you think about, okay, well, I'm never going to know as much about this business inside out as the founder will. They can go and take money from a lot of other people. What do I bring to the table that's very different than everybody else? And it's gonna convince them to work with me. You have to put yourself in this position and really take an honest look at your experience and yourself, And that's why you see a lot of venture capitalists who were founders before, because they can say, hey, I've been in your shoes. I get it. I know what you're feeling. I know what you're going through. Let me tell you about how I solved it, and let me introduce you to others. And so to me, venture capital at the end of the day, it's a sales role and it's a networking role, right? You want to introduce that founder to great candidates they can hire for their business. You want to introduce them to people who've been in their position before, who can help them, through that kind of process or problem. So then you start kind of working backwards, right? And you start thinking, well, if this is my value and this is what I can bring to them, how do I maximize that, right? So then you have to start thinking about building a network in different industries. If there's one, if you focus on artificial intelligence and machine learning, I got to go build a network of experts in that industry so that I can connect them with my founders, and I can talk about this thing differentiating me from the other VC who has just as money as I do, but maybe they don't have my network. So it's really, it's thinking about what differentiates you. And that was something that we thought a lot about at Foundation, is like, what makes us different than everybody else? And how do we use that to really work with some interesting founders and interesting companies? And then outside of all of that, just being able to meet some really, really smart founders was just the best part. You're meeting people who are dedicating, 10 plus, maybe 15, 20 years of their lives to solving this one problem, which is a really, really big deal.
Yeah.
And then just having the opportunity to work with them and to talk to them and to listen to them and hear more about their journey and why they're doing something. I thought was really cool. A lot of people have some really great stories, about why they're making this big decision to focus on one thing. And a lot of the times, these founders are giving up high-paying jobs they could have had other places. They're giving up time away from their friends and their families. So this is a big decision for them. And I think as VCs, you really have to think about that when you're working with founders. And it's a long-term relationship, right? If I partner with you in your seed round, average time for a company to have a liquidation event or an exit, 7 to 10 years. Like, that's longer than some marriages, right? That's longer than some relationships. So why, are you willing to work with this person for the next 10 years? Maybe, multiple times a week, multiple times a month, you're going to talk to these people.
Yeah.
Is this a good relationship to get into? So these are all the questions you kind of have to ask yourself as you try and partner with people. So it's really cool to be able to see really seasoned venture capitalists go through this thought process and go through these through these deals and work with these companies just because they've done it before and they're so good at it. So just being able to kind of sit on the sideline, watch them, and try and help them in any way that I can was one of the best experiences I've had in my career.
That's really exciting. I think that just the way you said that, I think it brought a punch of Fuz's face as well. I think it was really interesting. So here's what I'm curious about, Evis. So you've gone from sales to consulting to venture capital. What's happening right now? Now, I believe you're in product. So
you missed product management. You missed product management. So basically, all the jobs, Evis has it in his LinkedIn.
Yeah, for sure. So I did sales, consulting, and then most recently I did product. Just got a new role. Was thinking about doing some venture venture capital work. Was interviewing at a bunch of places, had some great opportunities. And then, one very early stage opportunity came up for a business out in Mountain View in the Bay Area. So I decided to move forward with that. So leading their go-to-market strategy for their products. So in the data encryption and the data security space and data privacy space. So super excited about that. Eventually have to move out to the Bay Area from Chicago. But luckily I'd lived there before, so I have some sort of familiarity with it. We'll see. That's coming up in a few weeks, and I'm always ready to take on the new challenge. And I think for me, especially coming out of a place like business school, if you talk to a lot of people and they'll say, hey, if you want to work at early stage startups, or you want to work at venture capital, why don't you go join Slack or go join any company that's like a Series B or Series C that's about to IPO?
Yeah.
And my response to that was always, that's like, the fun's already been done at that point, right? You already have a lot of customers, you already have product market fit, you already have established products with established operations. Like, you're not doing something new. And to me, that is the 0 to 1, right? That's why I love that book so much. Is when you're at a point where everything is still so brand new and you're building it all together with other people who also want to build it. That's where things are really, really fun and really, really interesting. So that's the next, that's the next step on the journey. And maybe after that, it's go do venture capital at some point in life. But who knows? I think everybody has multiple careers.
Sure.
No, absolutely. I know Evis, that sounds super exciting, and I just love I love the book 0 to 1. I love the references you made, and I was just gonna say I'm like super excited for that opportunity for you, and I won't be surprised if I see if I see Y Combinator posting your picture in their LinkedIn or like Sequoia,
Maybe someday, we'll see. Maybe someday.
yeah, Sequoia or some of them just saying that you raised a Series A or B from one of them A16Z or Sequoia, man. So won't be surprised at all.
Yeah, you guys will see it first. You guys will see it first.
Awesome, yeah. But said, so I think it's time for our wrapping up segment, right?
Yeah. So let's actually jump into the wrap up real quick. So, what advice do you have for people considering an MBA? Why should they do it? Why should they not? When's the right time?
Yeah, I think in terms of if and when you should do it, I think it's all about what are you looking to learn, what are you looking to optimize, and why does it make sense? You definitely do not need an MBA by any means to be successful. However you define success in your own life. I think it's a big time investment, it's a big money investment. So you really have to think about, this is something that the MBA admissions process will ask you is why do you want an MBA? Why does it make sense for you? And I think a lot of people say, well, I just want it because other people have it. But that's not a good answer, right? You want to think about like, how is this going to help me, and really take an honest look at yourself and your career, and what you think you want to do one day, and then how does it fit into your story of who you are. I think I talk a lot about this like story. It's right. It's your story to me is so much more important than than one particular thing that you've done. And just one quick analog to this is like, you think about like the equity markets when a company goes public. One of the things I've learned at Booth is that like the price matters. It definitely does, but the price changes all the time, right? What investors are looking at when a company goes public is they're looking at the story. I want to hear about, why is this the right time for this company to go public? Why is this the right move? And you can think about that as yourself, right? Why is this the right move for you? Why is this the right time for you? And I think if you ask yourself that question, that will start to paint this picture of like, I should do this now, or I should do this later, I should go do this other thing and then go do it. It really starts to put the pieces of the puzzle together of if it makes sense for you, and if it does, when do you really do it? So I think if you've had those questions and you've asked yourself that and you're like, yeah, I definitely want to do this, this makes a lot of sense for me. Start talking to schools, start visiting them, start talking to people who are there. You reach out to the admissions team. What I did was I talked to every single school that I wanted to go to. I talked to the admissions teams. I had them do resume reviews. They allowed them to do a free resumes review. I had them do that for me too. Talked to a lot of like admissions counselors. A lot of them charge a ridiculous amount of money if you actually go through with it. But a lot of them also do free reviews as well. Like talk to 15 of them. Who cares, right? If they do it for free, take advantage of it. Try and get as much as you can by paying as little as you can. That's exactly what I did. So I think if you've gone through all those conversations and you still think it makes sense, then go full force and commit to doing it and don't look back.
Wow.
Yeah, no.
That's solid advice.
Yeah, no, thanks a lot, Evis. I think that's definitely some like really cool insights over there. Something for to take notes on. I think the other question we ask all our guests, especially for due to COVID right situation right now, like what advice do you have for like current students or job seekers who lost their COVID internship or job opportunity and sort of got the worst of COVID-19 job industry wise? What would you suggest them?
Yeah, it's happened to me. I had an internship. I had a job offer before COVID. As soon as COVID hit, it got put on hold. And eventually, I was with a venture capital firm, and they eventually said, hey, we need to just put this on hold for indefinitely. And it was a bummer. It sucked, right? It's like you put a lot of time into something, and you're really excited about it, and it doesn't plan out. I think at the end of the day, and you may see this if you follow the startup world and the VC world, is that a lot of the companies are, a lot of good companies are formed during sort of turbulent times. So I think look at this as an opportunity. There's a lot of other smart people out there, right, who are also maybe wanting to do something. If you want to start a company, go start a company with those people, right? You're both in a position where, you can take a risk, right? I think as you get older in life and as you sort of have more and more responsibilities, you have to be more thoughtful about the risks that you take. So it's a really good time to start to reevaluate, maybe this isn't the right thing that I want to do. And if you still think it is, then go full force, right? Network as much as you possibly can. The job boards just don't work that well, right? You're going to be applying, but so aren't, literally thousands of other people. You're going to get, the way you're going to get selected, reach out to people, if you try and build connections and try to build, genuine connections and try to learn about them and try to learn about their business and try and help in any way that you can. That's how you're going to make yourself stand out. So, reevaluate what you're doing. Ask yourself, is this still what I want to do? And if it is, think about how you can do something differently than what everybody else is doing, because everybody else is also thinking the exact same thing. So think about how to differentiate yourself.
No, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. I think definitely like there's a lot of those opportunities out there that people can do now, and just job wise, or even if they want to start a company. So that was some golden advice. Thanks, Evis, and especially because you went through that thing yourself, you faced the worst of it as well. So that's really thanks for sharing all that. Yeah.
Sure.
All right. So I think it's time to roll up the curtains. So any closing remarks? Any advice for our viewers today, or any closing thoughts, Shafuz, from you?
I think I just want to say like thank you so much like just for taking the time and just spending an hour with us. I know we promised 45 minutes, but we always lie about it. It usually goes for more than that. But dude, we really enjoy talking to you and we learn so much. Like we usually write a lot of key takeaways from the sessions, like a whole article about it. So this one's gonna be really long, but we're gonna go back to the whole session. But yeah, Evis, like any lasting thoughts you want to leave the audience with?
For sure. I think, look, at the end of the day, it's do something you're excited about, do something that you're passionate about, and there's always a new day. So if you're down about losing an internship, losing a job, there's always something around the corner, and there's always something new that you can do. So just think about sort of why you're doing it as more than sort of what you're doing. And I think if you just follow your passion and follow something that you're really interested in doing, even if it's taking a step back in a role or taking a role that you feel like you're overqualified for, sometimes you have to take a step back to go 2 steps forward. So keep pushing, just keep grinding, keep working, and eventually things will work out the way that they should. Yeah,
and no, absolutely, and you might also like just end up if that's what you're trying to do, to end up in one of the best business school. You could do that as well. I think it was just our main theme today. But so thanks a lot, Evis, and I guess for everyone, Sid, any thoughts like?
Yep. As next step, go make sure follow Evis on LinkedIn. Really cool guy. As you can see, we've had an amazing conversation. If you do want to continue a conversation, feel free to reach out to him. Additionally, go visit us as Careers Uncorked. On our website, you'll be able to find a recap of this session as well as other sessions that we've had throughout. And that should be it. Thanks, guys, for joining us today. And thanks so much, Evis, for your time. This has been awesome.
Really appreciate your time, Evis. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much for watching, guys. Make sure to hit the like button if you enjoyed the video and consider subscribing to receive a notification next time we post. Catch you next time. Wow.
Okay. Like this?
My God.
Oh.
My God.